Welcome back. Doctors discover brain damage in victims of suspected sonic attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Cuba. Medical professionals treating those affected say that they found changes to white matter, which allows a number of channels of the brain to communicate. At least 24 U.S. Embassy employees were injured in the attacks in Havana, resulting in hearing loss and other symptoms. Now, some diplomats affected reported hearing strange sounds, leading some to believe a sonic device might have been used, but investigators have not found such a device as they continue to search for answers. Meanwhile, Cuba denies any involvement in these attacks. It's been nearly 1 month since President Trump restored travel restrictions to Cuba following unknown attacks on American nationals working in the embassy, as we just mentioned, and this has been happening all around that country. One America's Kendall Forward has more on how that decision has impacted Cuba.
Well, it's now been discovered that the victims of those attacks, which first presented itself as unexplained health problems like loss of hearing, memory, and balance, could also have brain abnormalities as a result. The president promised to roll back those Obama-era policies of easing of tensions between the United States and Cuba, saying the United States was getting too little, too late.
Roughly 1 month since President Trump followed through with the campaign promise and reinstated travel restrictions on Cuba, the island country is now facing economic pressure. The administration banned U.S. citizens from doing business with dozens of entities that have links to Cuba's military, intelligence, and security agencies.
I think it was an excellent move. Part of what has happened in Cuba, folks are forgetting that the military controls a great deal of the economy in Cuba. The military are the key repressors on the island. So anything that says, first of all, we don't want that money spent on those kinds of activities, I think is a positive thing.
Senior Fellow for Strategic Initiatives Fernando Menendez says it was a mistake to reopen trade and travel without negotiating what the United States would get in return. It's a concern the president cited when questioning the easing of hostilities, saying the U.S. gave away too much in exchange for too little. And even more, Menendez adds the deal gave the Cuban government legitimacy. The White House has blamed Cuba for a series of unexplained attacks on U.S. diplomats on the island, prompting their removal, as well as the State Department to halt visas for Cubans. Those attacks have since been discovered to be even worse, with doctors finding brain abnormalities in the victims. While it's still unknown who or what caused the attacks, Menendez says one thing to remember: nothing in Cuba happens without authorities' knowledge.
It didn't just happen. Someone is aware of it, somebody knows. And they can't just pretend that they don't, because they know everything that goes on in Cuba.
While the causes are still unknown, Menendez says there are rumors as to the involvement from foreign entities. He adds, on its own, Cuba is not a threat to the United States, but the threat is its close-knit involvement with other countries. And any actions moving forward, he believes, should be looked at in the interest of the U.S. national security.
The key to our relationship with Cuba is whether they pose any kind of a national security threat, and that's where extra-regional actors come in. Cuba in and of itself, one could say, is not necessarily a threat, but when you have Cuba in tandem with Iran, with North Korea, with Russia, with other adversaries of the United States, they're a beachhead.
Menendez also raised the possibility that someone within the regime who's unhappy of the easing of hostilities between the United States and Cuba could be responsible for the attacks. But again, that's just a theory of his. The cause is still unknown. Reporting in Washington, Kendall Forward, One America News.